Hello and welcome to a Wednesday English live stream and Happy New Year. Is it too late to say Happy New Year? I don't know.
No,
It's
because
it's a bit late.
we haven't spoken to our regulars, have we, for a long time? So Happy New Year to you all.
Happy New Year.
If
And I didn't wish you Happy New Year, Lynn. Happy New Year to
No,
you.
we wished each other Happy New Year by text, didn't we? We
We
texted
did.
to each other, but we haven't done it in person, even though we're not quite in person because we're not physically in the same room. But at
Yeah.
least I can see you this time. Happy New Year. Did you have a good New Year? Did you
I
come into
did.
the new year with good health and
Yes, touch
spirit?
wood. Touch wood.
Yeah.
I did. Knock on wood, as they say, or touch wood. I had a
Mhm.
very quiet, peaceful New Year and ready to get working again. And Happy New Year if you're joining us live. And if you're watching the replay as well, thank you for keeping us company. So, what are we doing? What are we talking about today?
Well, today we are having a very strange format of the class because this was Craig's New Year fresh idea. And he said, why don't we do that? The students can ask us anything.
Ask
And
us anything.
I thought that was quite a refreshing, exciting start to the year to ask us anything. You know that we love to talk. So if people ask us anything, then we can talk. And funnily enough, I was hoping you would ask me how my new year was, but the interesting
How was
thing
your
was,
New Year, Lynn?
well,
Tell us.
thank you, Craig. But at the new year, I lost my voice for 5 days.
Oh,
Can
wow.
you imagine how terrible that is for me? The gossip that I am. I talk all the time and I couldn't speak.
Were you ill? Were you sick? Did you have a
Yeah, I
cold or
just had
something?
I think so. And then my voice just disappeared. It was a little bit of a cold. I think several people I know have had a similar virus. But it was a strange experience for me not to be able to speak for 5 days. So I'm raring to go. You can ask me anything and then I can talk.
You can ask us anything, but before we go into that, and we want to talk a little bit about setting goals because we are still at the beginning of the year. We're still in January 2023, so we will be speaking about how to set and reach your English goals this year. But before we do that, we should probably introduce ourselves. If you don't know who I am, my name's Craig. I write material for mansioningles.com. Here we are, mansioningles.com. And there you can find free courses, lots of material, a bi-monthly newsletter. Every 2 weeks, we send a newsletter by email, and that will all help you to improve your English. And we also have a podcast at inglespodcast.com or wherever you listen to your podcasts.
Mhm.
And over here on my left or right, I don't know, is Lynn.
Yeah, I'm Lynn, and my website is putitlikethis.com. I'm an online English teacher, and I suppose I specialize in creating tailor-made courses for people. So I have the majority of my students, it's one-to-one, and basically I design a course so that you can fulfill your objectives, whatever they may be. It could be that you want to pass an exam, or maybe you work in business and you need to be more fluent when you make presentations, for example, or maybe you're a teacher of English and you want to improve your pronunciation or your classroom skills. So I offer a range of courses like that. If you go on to putitlikethis.com and you look at the different pages on the web, you'll probably find more information. And if you don't get it there, just contact me via the web and then I'll help you as best I can.
There you are, putitlikethis.com. Remember that address. Now, people are joining us. Hi, Gemma. Happy New Year to you. It's good to see you here. It's been
Yes,
a
Happy
long
New
time
Year,
since
Hema.
1st of January.
Yeah.
And Paloma, Happy New Year to you and everybody else who's watching. It's really
Okay,
good to
Happy
see
New
you all.
Year. Yeah. And it's been about a month, I think, isn't it? I can't remember when our last class was, but I think it was around the 21st or something. So it has
Yeah,
been a long time, hasn't it, since we've been
it
live
has.
streaming again.
It has. So the idea for today, if you have any questions about English, any grammar, vocabulary, anything at all, just write your questions in the chat and we will answer them if we can. So fingers crossed that we'll be able to answer what
You
you
don't know
actually
everything.
ask us. We don't know anything, but we'll do our best. And while you're thinking of anything you might want to ask us, we'd like to talk a little bit about goals, setting goals and reaching your goals for 2023. So I suppose the first question for you is, for you watching us here, do you set goals at the beginning of the year? Do you make New Year's resolutions? Maybe not resolutions, but when you think of a new year and you think of your English, specifically your English, especially your English, do you set yourself goals for the year? Do you turn over the page and say, okay, this year I'm really going to set goals and do my best to get there and to reach them? And if you do set goals, are they SMART goals? SMART. You might not know what SMART goals are.
No, I didn't know what SMART goals are until you told me.
Okay.
So now I'm feeling particularly smart because, of course, smart means clever, doesn't it? It means
Smart
that
can
you're
mean clever.
intelligent.
It can also mean you're very smart with the way you dress. You have a
Yes,
smart
that's true.
shirt on or a smart jacket,
If
and
you have a
obviously
good style. Mm-hmm.
a nice smart style.
Mm-hmm.
But when we talk about SMART goals, it is an acronym, and this is what SMART goals represent. The S in SMART means that the goals are specific. The M is measurable, attainable, relevant is R, or time bound or time sensitive is the T. So we're going to explain what that means exactly and how you can set your goals so that they are SMART this year. Hi, Andrea. Thanks for joining us. Happy New Year to you as well.
Hello,
Good to see
Andrea.
you
Happy
here.
New Year. Mm-hmm.
But before we go into this, Lynn, did you set any goals this year?
Well, when you were asking about, do we set goals, do we make New Year's resolutions, I'm going to split hairs here. When we split hairs, we start to get a little bit niggly. I think, to be honest with you, there's a difference between I have wishes and goals. And usually most of my New Year's resolution are wishes or desires, like I'd like to lose weight a little bit. I'd like to be fitter. Sometimes, often, actually, I also usually have they're my regular New Year's resolutions. I must eat more healthily. I must lose a little bit of weight. I need to tone up and become a little bit fitter. And I also have actually a language related goal, which is always I must improve my Spanish. But they're actually, I have to confess, I don't think they are goals. I think they are just wishes, because every year I wish the same and I don't really do anything about any of them.
I'm very similar, especially when it comes to exercise and weight. But it was interesting when you were describing your goals, they weren't SMART goals, because if you say I want to improve my Spanish, or if you say I want to improve my English, what does that actually mean? It's very vague. There's nothing specific there. And that's the S in SMART. If you say I want to improve my English, how can you measure that if it's not specific? If you say, I want to read 4 books in English this year, then you know when you get to December if you have read those 4 books or not. So that's a very specific goal, and you can measure it because you can count the books. 1, 2, 3, 4 books. Is it attainable? That's the A in SMART. Well, 4 books in a year? Yeah, I can probably read 4 books in a year. Maybe not 10 or 15 or 20, but 4 is an attainable, achievable goal. Sometimes the A is achievable. And is it relevant? Well, it's relevant to me because I want to improve my English, or I want to improve my Spanish. So the relevancy is if it's a goal that really fits into improving your English or improving your Spanish. Yes, reading a book in my target language is a relevant goal. And is it time sensitive? Well, I just said this year. So before December, I want to read those 4 books. So making your goals SMART, make them more, it changes it from being a wish. Oh, I want to lose weight. Well, how much weight? How am I going to do it? how am I going to exercise to lose that weight? How many calories am I going to be eating? How am I going to improve my diet and do exercise? You have to specify it, and then it becomes a smart goal.
Mhm.
So that's the
That's
idea.
it's interesting because when I mean, you know it in theory, but I'm looking at my goals that I made, which is I'd like to be fitter, and of course it's pretty easy to actually make it smart, and then it makes you feel better about yourself because of, I mean, fitter is very general, but for example, I was very proud of myself last year because on New Year's Eve I did a fun run. There was
You
three.
sent me a photo
I
of
sent you a
you actually
photo
running. Yeah.
and I did it, and it was 3.5 kilometers, and I am not a runner. So maybe this year, if I want to be fitter, maybe I shall set myself the goal of running 2 fun runs in 2023 because I can measure those, you know.
Or
And I
you could be
think I could
really
probably
ambitious and
manage it.
a half
Mhm.
marathon,
Oh, you
maybe.
kidding? No, 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 no.
No?
If I can do 2, 3 kilometer runs in a year, that's enough. That's a half marathon is not attainable.
Okay. It has to be achievable or obtainable. And yeah,
Exactly.
and Felipe is the same, I think, as both of us. Getting fitter has been on my list for many years. Yeah, but it's very vague, isn't it, Felipe? To get, what does that mean, get fitter? Does it
It
mean to
is. Mhm.
achieve something? Does it mean that you want to run for 10 kilometers or something?
Mhm.
So you're making it specific is it changes it from a wish to a plan,
Mhm.
especially if
Mhm.
you write it down, then it
Yeah,
becomes
definitely.
attainable and realistic.
And you know what, as well, when you do that, I think you are like, for example, that wish, Felipe, that you said, getting fitter. You know, I've had that on my wish list. And I've also had getting thinner on my wish list since I was 20.
Me
And I
too.
look, yeah, and I think about it and I think to myself, was I ever thinner and was I ever fitter than I am now? And the answer is I mean, yes, the answer is clearly yes, because obviously I'm a lot older than I was when I was 20. But I'm not actually fatter or less fit by a great amount. And
Yeah.
when I actually think about it, then I think, you know, maybe I'm just, you know, being stupid. Maybe you don't really need to be fitter or thinner because I'm actually not that different from the way I was when I was 20, and the difference is probably accountable by age. It's a realistic thing. So it's sometimes I think we're just not realistic in our heads, are we ever? You know?
Yeah,
Mhm.
I agree.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Gemma's saying that she doesn't set big goals. She tries to go little by little. I agree. I'd like to speak about that a little bit later. The fact that it is better to start. Well, I won't speak about it now. But if you keep listening, that is definitely something I want to touch on or speak about. The fact that you do things in small amounts.
Mhm. It's definitely
Felipe,
the way to go, Hema. My
yes.
husband is that all the time. He's so moderate, and moderation beats everything. If you can just be moderate in life, but
Yeah.
it's not very easy for me. It's not in my nature.
In my case, it's to be able. I would use the infinitive there. It's to be able to fit into my clothes. Yeah. I keep clothes for years, hoping that one day I will be able to wear them again. So I don't lose hope. I keep them in my wardrobe. Hopefully, one day they'll fit me again.
Uh,
Yeah. So, what are your goals? I mean, some of you have said, Felipe has said about maybe doing more exercise and losing weight. But thinking of your English, have you made any English goals this year? Have you thought about how you can improve your English in a
and
smart way?
mhm.
Let us know in the
Andrea
chat.
has one. Andrea has one. Can you see that in the chat?
Andrea,
Mhm.
yes. B2 by IELTS. I think IELTS has a number
Hmm.
a number rating, don't they? Up to 9, I
They
think.
do,
B2
but
is
they also
Cambridge.
have a they also no, they also have a correspondence between
Oh, I didn't know that.
the
Okay.
numbers, and it corresponds to B2, but there's a few numbers. It's like a range. If you get between this score and that score, it's equivalent to B2.
Okay, I
So
didn't know that.
you can do that. Uh-huh. And Andrea, we say I made a goal or I set a goal. We don't do a goal. Okay. So you made a goal or you set a goal for 2023. It will be smart because you want to achieve B2. Yeah. And you have to be smart with those goals because you have specific things that you have to get on top of before you can get the level. Absolutely.
That is
Mm-hmm.
a good goal, Andrea, but I would break it down even further. So you've set your goal to reach B2 this year, but how are you going to get there? So what does your study plan look like
Mm-hmm.
on a weekly basis? What are you going to do with the 4 skills, the reading, writing, listening, and speaking? How are you going to get to that goal? How do you break it down and say, every week I'm going to do this?
Mm-hmm.
What are you going to listen to? How many exercises? How much time are you going to dedicate to studying English? It's a good
Mm-hmm.
idea also to break it down and
Mm-hmm.
be more specific.
Yeah. And you have to be a little bit flexible as well, I think, when you do an exam preparation, because as you start doing the preparation, you have to have very clear that you're going to start working and dedicate a certain amount of time to the exam. But you also have to be a little bit analytical too. And as you're going, maybe by week 2 or week 3, you have to be analytical and see what parts of the exam are you doing okay? Which parts of the exam are secure for you for B2 and which parts are not secure? And then you might change your plan and you might invest more time in the ones that are less secure than the ones that are more secure. That sort of happens. That's what I advise people to do, sort of at maybe a month into their exam preparation. But as you get closer to the exam date, then you have to be clever about a month beforehand, and you have to be strategic, and you have to see if there are areas in the exam that you really are not making progress on despite all of the work. Then you're probably not going to make a massive amount of progress in the last 3 weeks before the exam. If that's the case, it's much better to dedicate your energy to the areas that you do very, very well so that you can optimize your score on those areas. And then in the end, your exam score will come out, hopefully, on average, you're doing better. You have to be clever with that, with exam preparation, I think. Yeah. A lot of people, they throw themselves into the exam preparation and they just think by doing test after test after test after test, that is enough to then pass the exam, but that isn't. You have to be analytical about how are you performing on the separate parts of the exam, and if you're not performing, you have to then make a new plan about what do you have to learn to be able to perform better on that part of the exam. And then about, as I say, about 3 weeks before the exam, you need to develop a strategy for giving the best performance that you possibly can. And that might mean leaving those areas that you're frustrated with, yeah, and focusing on getting an even higher score in the areas where you're pretty safe, you know.
Yeah, that's really good advice. And
Mm-hmm.
to add to that, one thing, I spoke to Ben Gill from To The Point English on YouTube. My friend Ben, who also lives in Spain, he has a very good
Mm-hmm.
YouTube channel for Cambridge exam preparation. And he was on our podcast last week. I interviewed him, and he said
Mm-hmm.
something I never really thought about, that when you're studying for any English exam, many students have the tendency to work more on listening tests and use of English tests to practice for the
Mm-hmm.
exam, and not so much on the writing and the speaking. Why? Because it's very difficult to get feedback when you're studying by yourself. If you're preparing on your own for an exam, and you have no one to speak with, for example, or no teacher to give you feedback on your speaking, or no teacher to check your writing and tell you how to improve, and you're sitting there with a blank piece of paper and you have to write an article or a report or a letter for an exam, and
Then you
then what
don't
do you
do.
do? You don't know
Mhm.
if it's a pass. You don't know. You have no feedback. So many students also just go and do a listening and then check
Mhm.
their answers, or they'll go online and they'll do a use of English, or open a book and do a use of English and check their answers, because you get instant feedback. But don't forget, you need to work on your speaking and your writing as well.
Mhm.
And that never occurred to me. That's a
No,
very
no, no,
good.
that happens a lot. Yeah. And I
Yeah.
can, if anybody wants advice, we won't keep talking now because this session is You Ask Us. But if anybody wants advice on how you can do writing practice, I can help you with that as well. I can give you some tips. But anyway, let's see. Ask us some
Put it
questions.
like
What is it that you
this.com.
want to do? No, but I mean, in the session. Yeah. I mean, I can, if you really want writing help, you can come to me and be my
And
student.
speaking.
But and speaking, of course, if you want me to help you prepare an exam. But this session is a free session, and you're very free to ask us for advice, and I can give you some advice on things you can do on your own. Okay?
Absolutely. Happy New Year, Christine. Good to see you. Don't worry, we have not been here either. We have both been tied up since December. So this is the first live stream we've been able to do since December last year. So don't feel guilty. We have not been here either, but it's really good to see you in here, Christine.
But Christine, can I stop you there, just because maybe the other people don't know that phrasal verb, to be tied up, and there's actually a typo in there. There's a spelling mistake. Because to be tied up means that to tie is to tie a knot, for example. And we have this phrasal verb, to be tied up, which makes it you look as if you have been kidnapped and you've been tied to a chair. And it means that you've been so busy that you couldn't do anything else. But the spelling, the past tense of that is T-I-E-D. Not T-I-D-E. So it's just a typo there, I think, probably with fluency with the keyboard, but the ED goes on.
And I think you tried another phrasal verb there, Christine, to show up. Is that the phrasal verb you were trying to show up? I'm sorry for not showing up too much. If you show up for something, you are present. You are there. You show up for a lesson, or you show up for a live stream. You are present. You are actually taking part. To show up for something. Nancy says, hello, my goal is to be confident with English speaking in my English exams. I hear your advice. No S on advice because it's an uncountable noun, Nancy. So I hear your advice. I hear your advice. Yeah, it's confidence in speaking is important, and I have a couple of suggestions for you, a couple of pieces of advice, The first thing you can do is to look at an exam question and answer it and record your voice on your phone. Take your mobile phone. Most phones these days have a record function, an app in the phone where you can record your voice, and just record yourself speaking for 1 minute, 60 seconds, or however long you need to speak for your exam, and then listen back and try to improve it. Record yourself again and keep doing it. Also, speak to yourself when you're by yourself. If you're in your car and you're driving and there's nobody in the car, speak English to yourself. If you're out in the street walking your dog, speak English to yourself. Just speak as much as possible.
Can I add a piece of advice as well there? And it's to do with when you record yourself. When you record yourself, people don't like doing that, but it is excellent advice, because in order to gain confidence with speaking, you have to speak aloud. The good thing about recording yourself is that you listen to yourself and you say, oh, I don't like that. I'm going to do it again. And I'm going to do it again. And I'm going to do it again. And it's the repetition of the same things which actually gives you confidence and fluency. Confidence and fluency is about repetition, repetition, repetition. And speaking, you can't do it in here just thinking. You have to do it speaking aloud. So record, re-record, re-record, re-record. And the other piece of advice I want to give is, when you listen to yourself, most people listen for mistakes. Yeah. So you're listening and saying, oh, did I use the present perfect there? Oh, I don't think it's present perfect. I think it's this, or I think it's that. Now, that is, of course, one thing that you can focus on. But if you want to gain confidence and fluency, I suggest to you for a few in one particular session, don't listen for mistakes, but try instead to listen. Do I sound English? Because a lot of people have problems with their intonation and their delivery, and they are so focused on the grammatical accuracy that they don't realize they are sounding either robotic, like a robot, or they're sounding very, very like the nationality that they are. So if you're Spanish, you might have a really heavy Spanish accent. Now, most learners can recognize a really heavy Spanish accent. And you analyze yourself when you're listening. Am I speaking like that? If you are, then step back and then try to imagine that you're Craig or imagine that you're me and see if you can play act and make it sound as if I'm saying it or Craig's saying it. What that does is it automatically changes the pitch of your voice because you're trying to be an actor. Okay. And that often improves the speaking. Now, because you're recording yourself, there's no need to be ashamed because nobody's listening to you. Nobody can hear you, but you're going to play. And then when you hear yourself back again and you hear that you actually sound better, then you become animated to try to sound like that more often, right? And I think this is a way of improving your speaking and your fluency if you're alone. Of course, if you're practicing with a teacher like Craig or I, then we would be doing this with you. But if you're practicing alone, that's something that you have to do when you listen back to your recordings. Don't just listen for, oh, I didn't use the right word or I didn't. Yeah, that is one type of feedback, but it's not the only type of feedback. And so the other approach is to listen to, oh, do I sound like that woman on the movies that I really love? Or, do I sound like Audrey Hepburn? And you can play, and it's quite fun. So
Yeah.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
And you could maybe try different accents. But also,
Mm-hmm.
apart from just recording your voice into your mobile phone, which can get a bit boring after a while, do you know somebody who can practice with you? Very often with these English exams, you need to do them in pairs. You need another student, especially with Cambridge exams, you're doing the exam with a partner. So do you know somebody in your family who you could practice with? Is there a friend who doesn't have to be somebody taking the exam as well, just somebody who speaks English? Try to find somebody who you can practice with and do a practice exam with somebody you know. And also, if you want to practice fluency, I do have a course that you can join. If you go to englishmasterclass.net, there's information there. And I practice fluency with a small group of 8 students, and there will be another one starting in February. So if you would like a paid course and get feedback from me, go and sign up there. Give me your email address, and I will give you information before the end of the month. Now, we
Mm-hmm.
do have another question here from about exams.
Andrea, I think it was.
Was it Andrea?
Yeah, she says she wants some tips. That's a good question. I
We
agree
gave
with
you
you.
tips on
Uh-huh.
speaking, writing. Yeah, there is
Mm-hmm.
Cambridge have
That's what
obviously the
I
best.
wanted to. Is the write
Yeah,
and
you go
improve?
ahead.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'll put
yeah.
it in the chat. Yeah.
So Cambridge, who creates a lot of the exams, it doesn't create the IELTS exam, but Cambridge creates exams which are similar to IELTS, because IELTS looks at levels and Cambridge looks at levels too. And they have this fantastic app now called Write and Improve. And Craig has put the link in the chat file. Now, this is artificial intelligence, and it's very powerful. And basically, you write something. So when you're trying to write, you can write your answer. And then when you're happy, you can upload it into this program, and this program will give you some feedback on it. Yeah. And obviously, it's artificial intelligence. It's not a real teacher, but they can detect many problems with your writing, and they give you tips about how to improve it. You go back, you rewrite it, and then you upload again. So it gives you an opportunity to immediately try to refine what you've written. And that is a fantastic learning experience, because you can correct quite a few fluency mistakes, grammar mistakes, maybe some of the mistakes that you constantly make. This program constantly says, "Are you sure? Do you really mean this? This makes no sense." And you have to then reformulate it in order for the artificial intelligence to recognize it and say, "Yeah, that makes sense." Now, it's really working with a machine. It's not 100%.
Oh, that was my question.
Yeah, no,
Have you found it accurate?
it's definitely not 100%. It's not the same as if your teacher was giving you full feedback on your writing. But the learning experience that you can get with that is very powerful. And I have students who are working with me in a paid course doing exam preparation. I teach them writing, and they are writing for me, but they are using Write and Improve first, and then they're giving me a version. And then I'm giving them the final feedback on what they can do to improve, because you don't need necessarily to pay a teacher like me or Craig to correct a mistake with present perfect or the third person S on a verb. It's not really necessary to pay for that if you understand the mistake you've made. Probably you know the grammar mistakes you made, you understand why. So you don't need your normal teacher to be correcting these fluency mistakes that you're making if you understand what the mistake is. What you need teachers like Craig and I for is to explain the things that are more complex than that. And so as I say, I have students who work with me. They use the Write and Improve app, and they are learning, and they're becoming more accurate, more precise. They're eliminating their ingrained errors. And then the time they spend with me is for more sophisticated teaching. Yeah, if you like. And so for any of you who are working on your own, because maybe you can't afford to do a course, or maybe you haven't got the time to do a course and you have to do it on your own, the Write and Improve is a very good tool for you for that as well. But it's also good for people who want to be in normal classes. But it means that you get better use out of your real teacher if you use the Write and Improve first. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good resource. But moving away from exams for a few minutes, Felipe says that in his case, he's not focused on an exam, but he wants to be able to have a common conversation among English speakers. I don't know if you know the website felipemeetup.com. It's depending on your area. Some areas have more things available than others. For example, if you live in a big city, there's a good chance there are people meeting up to practice English. So go to that website, meetup.com, write where you live and you're interested in practicing English or learning English, and search for groups in your area. And very often you'll find that people are meeting in a cafe in the morning for an hour or two just to have a coffee and speak English and practice. That's one thing you can do. Find out if there's a face-to-face meetup in your area. And if not, then you have to do it online. Or you could start one yourself. You could reach out and find people in your area who want to practice, arrange a time to meet once or twice a month, and go along or once a week, and go along and speak English with people. But you need to be proactive. You
Mm-hmm.
need to really get out there and look for people to practice with.
Mm-hmm. And of course, I don't know where was that, Felipe, was it? I don't know where you are, where you live, Felipe, whether you're in South America or in Europe. I know in Spain, here where we live, it's very common to have this thing called intercambio, where students at university put up on the notice boards little requests for intercambio. And often there are, for example, English students, English native speakers who are in Spain studying on a year abroad here in Valencia. And in an intercambio, what happens is you connect with those students, and the student, you will go out with them one night and you speak for 1 hour in Spanish and 1 hour in English. And of course, that's free and it improves conversation. Yeah, if that's often, I don't know if they do that in South America, but universities are the good place to look for things like that, because there's usually foreign students who need help with your language. And if you can get those foreign students, if those ones are English speakers, so Australians or Americans or Brits or Indians or South Africans, then of course they're native speakers. And if you can connect with them that way, that's a very cheap thing to do. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Question
Felipe's.
from
Mm-hmm.
Jose Francisco. What's your favorite English Christmas song, Lynn?
Oh, it's a carol, and it's "Oh Little Town of Bethlehem." I like
Oh,
that
Little
one.
Town of Bethlehem.
Mm-hmm.
Mine is very different from Lynn's.
Uh-huh.
It's the Pogues' Fairy Tale of New York.
A Fairy Tale of New York, yeah.
Very different.
I like that one too. I mean, there's lots of Christmas songs. Huh?
And that one by Chris Rea is also not bad. Driving Home for Christmas. I
Yeah,
like
you
that as well.
mentioned that before Christmas
Yeah.
as well. I know your favorite Christmas songs now. We've done We've done 2 Christmas specials.
Felipe said he's tried those meetups before the pandemic. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think. Why did you stop then, Felipe? Was it not? Oh, was it the pandemic that
The
stopped you
pandemic,
meeting
probably.
up? Probably. Yeah,
Mm,
you can join my course. You're very welcome, but you will have to pay,
mhm,
unfortunately, because I do give tasks during the week, and I get online and create activities for you to talk about in the group. So that's why I charge for it. But if you want something that's free, then maybe in a Facebook group or an online forum, you just have
mhm,
to be proactive and look online for different
mhm, mhm,
things.
mhm.
Um,
Another thing is, Felipe,
yeah,
because you say you're sort of shy and it was a bit hard at the beginning. Another opportunity, of course, it's difficult if you're not in an English-speaking country. But a lot of people ask me, they say, "Oh, I want to improve my speaking and I'm going to go to England in the summer and I'm going to do a language course. I'm going to go there for 2 or 3 weeks." And I'm always personally a little bit skeptical about language courses in England. And I'll tell you why. Because the students who ask me are following a language course with me in Spain. So they're spending all year doing the language course with a teacher, and a language course physically in a school in here in Valencia or online and in England is exactly the same, right? The only difference possibly in England is that in the group, if you're in a group, you might have different nationalities, right? But really, the language teaching is exactly the same. And what I often say to my students is, give yourself a break in the summer. Don't go to England and study English. Think about something that you like. Maybe it's pottery or art or riding or some kind of sport, and see if you can get yourself on a week's course in England learning something new. Because if you go on a course in England to learn to paint or to learn how to ride or to I don't know, learn how to do pottery or something creative, you're going to be in a group with a lot of native speakers, and you will automatically have to communicate with those people, and you don't get any more authentic or natural than that.
Yeah,
And
that's
that
true.
is much better than replicating your language learning experience that you have in your own country, in America or in Britain. Do something exciting. Go on a sign up for a hike through a 5-day hike up the mountains, but make sure you book it with an English company where you know it's not a language
English
learning
speakers.
activity.
Yeah, because the tendency
Yeah,
is when you go away in a group that there are going to be people in your group who speak your first language. So that it's so much easier to speak in your language in the group. So
exactly.
you're in somewhere like Ireland or England or Scotland or Canada or wherever, or the US, and you're speaking Spanish or Italian or French
Mm-hmm.
because there are people in your group who speak your language. That's
Mm-hmm.
crazy.
Mm-hmm.
That's just wasting your money. I do have one person in my current conversation class. He wants to go to the US and travel along Route 66 with his
Oh, how
son.
exciting.
So he's practicing his English, getting his English up to speed so that when he goes, he'll be a little bit more fluent. And exactly what you just said, I have another student who is interested in letterpress. Do you know what letterpress is?
Yes, her word, like
A
it's
type.
the typefacing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So she
Mm,
wants to do a course also this year and go
mhm.
abroad to an English speaking country. So she's preparing for that. So that's really, really good advice. Whatever your hobby is, whatever you're interested in, then go and do that abroad and
Mhm.
practice English there.
Mhm.
Good advice. We were speaking about goals then. Let's get back to goals because we had another point to discuss, and that was what can we do when we don't achieve our goals? Because it's all very well setting your goals, making them smart, writing them down on paper, putting the post-it note on the fridge, and then you get to February and
You know what I'm going to say? You know what I do when I don't when I can't achieve my lose weight goal? I eat more
you eat
chocolate.
more chocolate. Yeah. Um, well, I don't know if you've heard of someone called James Clear. He wrote a very successful book called Atomic Habits.
Oh.
And I was listening to him being interviewed on a podcast yesterday, and something he said I think is very important. Don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. What does that mean? Well, it's your systems that get you to your goals. So if you create good habits that are going to take you to your goals, it's not really that goal of getting down to 60 kilos or passing that exam or whatever your goal is. It's the systems you put in your life on a day-to-day basis that will take you there.
Mhm.
So even if you maybe had a bit too much chocolate, don't keep eating chocolate. Say, okay, today wasn't that successful, but if the system is there that you're following a diet, then the next day you get back into those habits and on that system. And then that will take you eventually to your goals. I think that's very
Mm.
powerful. Put
Mhm.
those
No, it
systems in
is.
place. How many words are you going to learn per week? How much time are you going to dedicate to studying grammar?
Mhm.
What conversations? How much time are you going to record your voice? Those are the things you should be putting in place, those systems.
And you do have to measure them, because we're giving you lots of advice here about recording yourself or doing the write and improve. But it's like that second M, it was the M, wasn't it? The second letter in the acronym SMART, measurable. So you have to quantify them. If you set yourself the goal of making 2 speaking recordings a week, yeah,
Yeah,
that's doable. But if you just say, "Oh, yeah, I'm
achievable.
going to do the speaking," then probably a week goes by, another week goes by, and you haven't done it. And it is true. And I want to point out something there when it comes to vocabulary too. I think many students say, "Oh, yes, I have to improve my vocabulary." And then they go to class or they're working on their own and they're writing huge lists of vocabulary. It's amazing how many students have rewritten the dictionary almost because they write out lists and lists and lists of vocabulary. And the reality is is that if they are lucky, maybe once or twice in their lives, they sit down with that book and they learn, or they try to test themselves on that vocabulary. But the majority of time, what happens is they write it down and then they never look at that page again. Or even if they do, as I say, it's once or twice. And that is not an effective way to learn vocabulary. Yeah.
No,
And the
it's not.
way to learn vocabulary is you have to prioritize your vocabulary. So if you don't think that the word is useful for you,
Don't
then
learn it.
don't learn it. Okay. And the thing is, you have to be very, very realistic when it comes, and systematic when it comes to learning vocabulary. So, for example, a measurable amount of vocabulary to learn is, I always say, pick five expressions, 5 pieces of vocabulary, write them down and see if you can test yourself every day on those 5 pieces of vocabulary for a week. Right? So you can have 5 words a day. Imagine how much that is. That's 35 words a week. But what you have to do is you have to review those 5 words at least
Hmm.
7 times. Yeah. And then don't, you've got to have some kind of repetitive system. There are also apps like Quizlet, for example, which are excellent.
Anki.
And what's the other one called?
Anki.
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 Anki, that one, Anki. And the beauty of those is that they're apps for your phone. And so testing yourself on 5 words of vocabulary is a very easy thing to do. You can do it in the queue when you're waiting for the bus.
I thought you were going to say in the toilet there for a minute.
You can do it in the toilet. I did think that was telepathy. You can take your phone to the toilet. Many people do. And you can test yourself. You can do it while you're waiting for the water to boil for your pasta, right? 5 words. And as long as you test yourself on those 5 every day for 7 days, then you're probably going to be really remembering the vocabulary.
And also try and incorporate those words into your writing and your speaking.
Of
Why
course.
do you remember your phone number? Why do you remember your registration number of your car? Why do you remember your identity number? Because you need to repeat it quite often. And it's the same with vocabulary. If you don't use the vocabulary that you're absorbing, then you won't retain it in your head. So make it part of your lexicon, your everyday vocabulary. Christine's got a really nice idea. Get a job in which you can practice your speaking
Fantastic,
skills.
Christine.
Nice. Congratulations. I hope you are enjoying your job. That's fantastic on a daily basis.
That's great.
Yeah.
And I think, Christine, you speak more than one language. It's not just English that you speak, isn't it? You speak another language too, I think. So she's using more languages, I think. Yeah.
Eduardo has a wonderful sense of humor, and he says measurable is close to miserable to my ears.
To my ears. Oh.
That's how my English is. No, I don't think that's true, Eduardo. I think you are underestimating your English. It's very, very good. What else do we have here? How do people's goals change as they age?
Oh. Well, that's clear. Mine don't. I still want to get fitter, don't
Yeah. But we focus on different things, though, don't we? I think when we're younger, we're a lot more maybe ambitious, career-minded, perhaps. We're hungrier when we're younger. Oh, I want to have a really nice car. I want to get a big house. I think as we get older, our goals do change. I think mine have changed.
Really?
Yeah, I focus more on controlling my time than I used to. So one goal I have this year is to make my time more productive and more useful, and try not to waste time. I think when you're younger, you don't appreciate time so much.
I don't think my goals have changed so much, but I think they've just probably become more smarter.
Smarter.
Yeah, really, because I think it's just because as you get older, you realize that you have to do something to achieve those goals, and you know what you have to do. And, we do become better at being able to do it. I mean, I joke that I can't, lose weight or get fitter every year. But I know that if I put my mind to it, I can. It's just that it's not my priority. I have other priorities, and I know the priorities that I have, and I know what I have to do to achieve them. And I think that comes with experience, definitely.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think the goals themselves haven't really changed that much. They just become more realistic, maybe, is the
Yeah.
what happens with your goals.
Yeah. I think that's true for me as well.
Because I think when you're 18 and you say, I want to have a Ferrari, or I want to, I don't know, travel the world or whatever. Yeah, it's not actually, it's a wish, really. And I think it's like what we said at the beginning. There's a difference between a wish and a goal. A wish is a wish, but a goal is when you actually start to think about how can you get it.
Yeah.
And that's different. Mm-hmm.
Another thing I hear my students say very often is, I don't have time. I don't have time to study. Well, how can you make time? Just obviously, there are only 24 hours in a day, 7 days in a week. You can't get more hours, but you can stop doing some things. And here we go back to habits again. Are there any bad habits you have that you could maybe change a little bit and make them more productive habits? How much time do you spend watching TV in 1 week? Can you take 1 hour from your TV time and dedicate that to English, for example? Do you go out very often with your friends? I'm not saying don't go out with your friends, but maybe go out less with your friends and spend more time on your English. It's just a suggestion. Is there anything in your life that does take up your time and you could change that into useful time for study? Just an idea.
Mm-hmm. I can make time by giving up work, but unfortunately my life circumstances don't allow that just yet. I have to
Me
wait a few
neither.
more times, a bit longer before I can retire, but I know I can make time if I didn't have to work.
Yeah. Eduardo says, as you age, your main goal is to stay alive. Yeah. I wake up every morning, I think I just hope I can get to the end of the day and not die and forget those New Year's resolutions that you never achieved. Yeah.
Yeah.
I get very frustrated about resolutions that I don't achieve. But as I said before, I'm focusing this year more on creating systems and habits and not focusing on one particular goal. So that's what, anyway, I'll
Well,
let you know in December how successful I am.
I like Eduardo's comment, because that means that you can make goals, and then if you don't achieve them, but you actually get to the next year when you're making the goals again, at least you can pat yourself on the back
That
and
you're
say,
still
I
alive.
stayed alive another year.
Yep.
I didn't quite fulfill the goals, but here I am again, ready to make them again. So I stayed alive. That's good.
Who was that comedian? Some comedian said that every morning he wakes up, opens the newspaper, and looks at the obituaries in the newspaper to see who's died. And if he doesn't see his name, then he's having a good day. Was it Groucho Marx said that?
I don't know who said that.
Anyway, whatever you decide to do, as far as your English is concerned this year, I hope that you do set your goals and that you achieve your goals, because you feel better, you feel good. And it's good to set goals and improve yourself. Self-improvement, I think, is a very positive, a very good thing. So
I also think, I don't really, a silly thing is on New Year's Eve, when we make New Year's resolutions, often we make New Year's resolutions look into the future. But sometimes what we don't do is look back positively about all the things that we did achieve,
yeah,
And when a year has gone by, usually everybody has achieved something. It's just that you're not paying the right attention to the positive things that you have achieved. And it's important to do that if you want to have a realistic image of what you can do. And I think that applies to language learning, because language learning is a very long process. It goes on and on and on, and you can never stop learning language. Some of our listeners maybe are B1 or B2, and some of our listeners are maybe C2, and they've been at English for years and years and years, and they're still learning. I have C2 students regularly with me, and they are still learning because there's always something.
I learn new words every week,
Yeah, and the
and I'm a
problem
native
with
speaker.
and language learning is very long, and especially when you're like around B1 and B2, you sometimes start feeling a little bit tired because you're thinking, oh my God, I want to learn English and I still haven't finished. And it's
There's no
still going
finishing.
on. But, you know, there is no finishing. And that's why it's especially important to reflect on what you can do now that you couldn't do last year. And you'll realize that if you've been learning regularly, you'll probably realize that you actually have improved quite a lot, but you haven't been aware of it.
Yeah.
You know?
But if you do have a specific goal this year, if you have a job interview coming up, if you have something specific that you're studying for, Lynn, I think you can help people, can't you?
Yes, I hope so. I try. I try my best. No, yes, if you have if you have specific goals, because that's really the focus of the way that I teach. I don't teach anybody without a goal. So I really don't, because it's the first thing that I establish whenever I start a course with somebody, and it's their goals that determine how long the course is, what the content of the course is, and how we're going to work together. I never start a course without a goal. And so if you, that's really that's the speciality of putitlikethis.com. I don't offer a standard course. Like, you don't come to me and I say, yeah, we're doing a standard course, because it depends on where you are. And then I teach you what you still have to learn in order to achieve the goal that you tell me is your goal. So that's the theory behind and the practice behind Put It Like This. So if you're interested like that in doing something like that with a teacher, if you need a teacher, then you can come to my website and ask me.
Okay. And if you want to focus on fluency, then I am starting new courses in February. So englishmasterclass.net is where you can sign up for the email list, and I will send you information about February's courses as soon as I've decided the date that they're going to start, because I don't know at the moment. But fluency in small groups is what I do online. And of course, at mansioningles.com, you can study for free. Lots of free courses over there, especially if you are a Spanish speaker. And if you don't know about the podcast, at inglespodcast.com, there's a weekly podcast that will also help you to improve your English. So thank you very much for being here. It's nice to be back, isn't it, Lynn?
Yes,
It was
it is.
good.
It's nice. Yeah.
Thanks for your company. Keep studying, keep going,
Yeah.
and
Keep going, everybody. Have faith.
don't lose faith. Keep the faith.
Don't lose faith. Keep going. And yeah, I'll be back in 2 weeks' time. And
Yes.
are you coming back next week, or are you waiting?
I'm not
2 weeks?
sure. I may be here next week, either by myself or with a guest, but keep watching Twitter, keep watching Facebook, keep watching YouTube, and I will let you know nearer the time. But we will definitely be back together 2 weeks from today. So
Okay.
until then, or next week maybe, have a good week and we'll see you soon.
Yeah, have a good week, and thank you for all the questions and your comments. Okay.
Take
Bye-bye.
care. Bye-bye.